for cultivating progress across the South, for working to unconditionally improve the lives of all, and for the bold underwriting of every Gravy podcast. SFA thanks our visionary Louisville, Kentucky friends, Pam and Brooke Smith.
SFA loves Northwest Arkansas. Seriously. We have visited Bentonville over and over for events, to collect oral histories, to make films, and for this podcast. If you haven't made it yet, here's the deal. Northwest Arkansas, aka NWA, is a growing metropolitan area in the once rural Ozarks, encompassing the cities of Bentonville, Fayetteville, Springdale, and Rogers. There, you'll find a world-class museum, Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art, and a greenway system that draws mountain bikers from around the globe. Multinational corporations, Walmart, Tyson Foods, and J.B. Hunt call the area home, as many of the founders of those companies were born and raised in NWA. Some 32,000 students at the University of Arkansas also call the place home. And as the population of Northwest Arkansas grows, so does the diversity of the region. Recent data tells us that in 1990, Hispanics and Latinos represented 1% of the total population of Northwest Arkansas. Now, that number is 17% and growing. Today's episode focuses on a relative newcomer to the area. Chef Rafael Rios moved to Arkansas in 2012 with a passion for food and no guarantees of success. Today, he and his family have 2 farms, a restaurant, a bar, 2 food trucks, and he's been named a semifinalist by the James Beard Foundation for Best Chef South 4 times. This is Gravy.
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 A production of the Southern Foodways Alliance, Gravy tells the story of the changing American South. I'm Melissa Hall. Reporter Mackenzie Martin visited Northwest Arkansas to learn more about Chef Rios and the place he calls home.
I meet Chef Rafael Rios on his farm in Rogers, a city of about 75,000 in Northwest Arkansas. Here, a third or so of the population identifies as Hispanic or Latino.
Hello! So nice to
How are
meet
you?
you.
Nice to meet you.
You have a lovely place.
It's nice.
When I was there in late September, there were colorful bell peppers, tiny spicy peppers, a truck full of butternut squash, fragrant tomatoes, and even some strawberries.
These are the sweetest strawberries you're gonna ever have. Aren't they good? There in the distance is some of the corn that we're working with. As you can see, the plants are taller than normal corn here in the United States. That's because we're working with heirloom corn.
The corn Rafael uses is from Mexico, and the ground corn dough he makes with it, called masa, has seen a resurgence in recent years in the United States because of its complex, robust flavor.
They're perfectly made for the preparation of food and tortillas.
The world's largest tortilla manufacturer is Gruma. You've probably seen its Mission Foods tortillas in the grocery store. Gruma also sells mass-produced brands of corn flour like Maseca, but they're like the white bread of the tortilla world. Trust me when I say that kind of corn flour doesn't hold a candle to Rafael's masa, which creates tortillas more akin to chewy, earthy, fragrant pieces of whole grain bread.
Hear the sounds?
The bugs?
Yeah, like when you're here by yourself and you hear that, it's the most relaxing things you can ever experience.
Quality of food and quality of life is important to Rafael and his family. That's why they grow so much of the produce for their restaurant at the farm. They farm 3 acres here and 4 acres on another farm in Little Flock, Arkansas.
So I live about a mile and a half that way. My dad is my next door neighbor, so we can literally like borrow sugar or something from each other.
Rafael's brother Roman also lives next to this farm. That's where you'll find the family dairy cow and an orchard of fig trees.
There's 7 of us, 7 siblings, 4 boys and 3 girls, and we're all here in Northwest Arkansas.
But they grew up 1,500 miles south. Allow me, if you will, to back up a bit here. Rafael spent his childhood in Michoacan, Mexico, which is on the Pacific coast, west of Mexico City.
Michoacan is known for its confit, carnitas, its culture.
Rafael loved growing up in Mexico.
I spent the majority of the time with my grandma and my mom in the wood-fire kitchens making tortillas.
That's where he learned about Mexican cooking traditions like nixtamalization, the traditional process that involves cooking corn in an alkaline solution like lime to make it into tasty masa for tortillas.
When you nixtamalize this corn, it activates the nutrients.
Rafael's dad, Hector Rios, was away during a lot of this, though, because he was a seasonal farm worker in California's San Joaquin Valley. And when Rafael was 14, the whole family moved from Mexico to California. Rafael wasn't really prepared.
It was a tough life, I would say.
They were in Oxnard, California, just north of LA on the coast. A beautiful part of the country, sure, but also one with a pretty high cost of living. And the city was a lot busier than the rural Mexican country Rafael was used to. Rafael remembers how they'd visit his dad at work every Sunday.
We'd go into the open fields where he was working with flowers and tulips and all these beautiful rows of multicolored flowers. And we'd sit in the middle of the fields and have a family lunch. And then we'd go home and he would stay back. That was the time we got together to be like a family. Other than that, he was always working out of necessity.
Rafael didn't know exactly where he wanted to go, but he knew he didn't want to stay in California. In 1997, when Rafael was 18, he joined the Army. And through that, he got a chance to live all over the world.
Texas, Virginia, D.C., Korea.
It was also in the military where Rafael discovered how much he liked making Mexican food for other people. He enjoyed the feeling of being able to bring a piece of home to the other Latino men and women in his unit as they traveled to faraway places. One time, on break from the Army, he went to visit his brother Roman in northwest Arkansas. Roman had moved there in 2004 so that he and his wife could be closer to her family. And when Rafael got there, he was immediately enamored by the cheap land and plentiful housing.
And I went home to California and told the rest of my family that this was the place for me.
Rafael couldn't officially join them until 2012 when he left the Army, but everyone else quickly got on board. Rafael's wife, Claudia, daughter Daniela, and son Mateo, in addition to Rafael's parents and his siblings. In part because Rafael's dad had long harbored a dream that seemed much more attainable in Arkansas.
He always had a dream of owning his own farm and doing his own thing. So at the end of the day, all the siblings came here because we wanted to be thankful for my dad. We actually caravanned here. 7 families at the same time. Wives, husbands, kids, moving trucks, personal vehicles.
Today, the Rios family still has Sunday meals, just like when they'd visit Rafael's dad in the fields. But the difference is that now they have quality time throughout the rest of the week, too.
Yeah, so this is where the family gathers on Sundays. And
Rafael gives me a tour of the barn, where they like to cook big batches of beans, rice, fried eggs, and tamales.
we cook, have arguments, and, you name it.
You guys argue?
Oh, we do. We do. Especially when it comes to, new stuff, the new generations, and we have kids. There's 18 to 20 teenagers under the age of 18 in the family. So there's always subjects that are touchy,
Rafael says the teenagers are pretty helpful come harvest time, though. Since the Rios family doesn't employ seasonal farm workers, the whole family pitches in.
Oh, hi!
All around us, by the way, are chickens and ducks just roaming free. Rafael makes sure to warn me to watch my step, lest I disturb an egg.
They escape at night, or they escape and they just, one day there's a hen with all the babies coming from the bushes in different places.
A chicken has stolen a pepper and is pecking it over there.
Well, that's what they eat. They eat everything. They eat a lot of vegetables.
So these are well-fed chickens.
Look at that beautiful thing.
Yeah, as soon as they see us, even when we open the door, they come running.
This is Rafael's brother-in-law, Octavio, who works on the farm. He says when they first moved to northwest Arkansas, It didn't feel particularly multicultural, but that's all changed.
And now there's a lot. There's quite a bit of us. There's quite a bit of diversity.
Rafael says his family was the first non-white family at the Bentonville Farmer Market around 2006. 6 years later, Rafael and his wife Claudia opened their first food truck, Yeyo's Mexican Grill.
My plan was to sell tacos and burritos and salads and stuff like that from April to November, and then take the rest of the year off and just go visit family in Mexico and just enjoy our lives. But things didn't work out that way.
They wanted to use produce from the farm and sell farm-to-table Mexican food. Rafael would do the cooking and Claudia would do the purchasing. But it was difficult to build a customer base, and everything was just harder than they thought it would be, especially considering the fact that Claudia was pregnant with their third child at the start of all of this.
We slept maybe 3 hours a night for 2 years. So I came to the conclusion that I would sell my business because I didn't want to do that anymore. And my wife, she was mad at me. She's like, Rafael, this is your dream. You have to really stick to it.
The pair had been together for 19 years at this point. So together they decided, 1 more year. And thankfully, things changed. They started marketing themselves better, customers started coming back, and before they knew it, they were out of the woods.
It's just one thing leads to another.
Today, Rafael still has the food truck, and a second truck, and a restaurant, and a bar. His next project, he says, is going to be an ice cream store. But most importantly, he has a mission that's bigger than just him.
We came here in search of a better life, which we have found. So now we work all day, all night, and we touch a lot of people, which is actually very important.
When we come back, we'll visit Yeyo's flagship restaurant in Bentonville to see how Rafael and the Rios family nurture a community in the dining room and in the kitchen. But first,
Maker's Mark bourbon is aged to taste in Loretto, Kentucky. The Samuels family uses locally grown, soft red winter wheat and sources water from a lake on the distillery's campus. Every Maker's Mark label is printed and die-cut by hand on an antique press, and each bottle is hand-dipped in their signature red wax. All the details matter when distilling quality bourbon. Since Maker's Mark sold its first case of bourbon to the Keeneland Racecourse in Lexington, they have perfected the craft of distilling American whiskey. For their dedication to making great bourbon and for their support of the Southern Foodways Alliance, we thank them. Maker's Mark crafts their bourbon carefully. Please enjoy it that way.
How are you doing, hon? I just want something like quick.
It's a busy Saturday night at Yeyo's El Alma de Mexico in Bentonville. And Enrique Irigoyen is behind the bar making all kinds of cocktails, with mezcal in particular.
People go think of tequila when you think of Mexico first, but if you go to Mexico, most people are going to tell you that our true spirit is going to be mezcal.
Chef Rafael Rios and his family love mezcal.
So we have the largest selection of mezcal you can ever find here in the state. We work with artisanal and ancestral mezcal.
If you've never had mezcal, it comes from the agave plant, like tequila. But while tequila is made from blue agave, mezcal can be made from hundreds of different types of agave. Mezcal is also traditionally cooked over the fire, giving it that signature smoky flavor. 7 miles away from where I am now, the Rios family has a mezcaleria, a bar that specializes in mezcal. But I'm here at the restaurant because what interests me most about the Rios family's various businesses is the food. All around me are delicious tacos, scratch-made tortillas filled with charred cauliflower, pineapple-marinated al pastor, and spicy chorizo. Also on the menu is spicy hominy pozole soup, topped with chili oil and Mexican street corn, and enmiladas, which are similar to enchiladas but covered in a rich chocolatey mole sauce. Some of the menu, like the Rios family farm salad, is seasonal and depends on what the Rios family is growing at any given time. Rafael makes it very clear to me. This is not the kind of place where the beans come out of a can.
The menu was designed based on the things that I enjoyed when I was growing up.
The whole restaurant is really a love letter to Rafael's early years, starting with the name. Yeyo is a longtime nickname for Rafael's dad, and El Alma de Mexico translates to the soul of Mexico. That's the tagline for the state of Michoacan, where the Rios family used to live.
We want people to experience conversations over food, friendship, family. That's the most important thing.
Colorful murals cover the walls, and the kitchen is completely open, so you can see and hear everything going on back there. The idea was to create an open street market type feeling like you'd find in Mexico, allowing customers to catch a glimpse of the skill and care that goes into preparing their food, which is important to Rafael because he's trying to change his customers' perceptions of Mexican food.
Still nowadays, there's a sense of degraded value, if you will. So we decided to focus more on the quality and changing that, making sure that there's a process understood by the people that eat our chips, for instance.
Rafael feels like diners in the U.S. aren't very knowledgeable about the complicated and often expensive processes required to make really good, authentic Mexican cuisine. Tortillas from scratch, really good mole sauce. You get the picture. Education is a part of the job Rafael willingly takes up. If a customer questions whether his tortillas are really all corn, for instance, Rafael will literally take them back in the kitchen and show them the machine they use to shape and cut the tortillas.
If you want to change perceptions, you have to show people what you're doing. It has to do with making sure that those seeds are planted in those people and they can go back and say, hey, it's actually true. They make their own tortillas.
He wants people to understand the nuances of the recipes so they understand why his food is slightly more expensive. It's partly why, he says, Bentonville is such a good place for them to be. The cost of living is slightly higher, so people are more willing to pay for higher quality food. It also helps Rafael's greater mission if the food is really good, which it is, by the way. When I visited Yeyo's, I brought my friend Kim Awa, who lives in nearby Fayetteville. She was immediately in love with everything, but especially
the nachos. With carne asada. It had this really nice green chile, queso. Oh, so good.
When I was there, the restaurant was filled with a mix of tourists who had heard good things, new residents, and longtime returning customers like Cass, who is 9 and came here for one thing and one thing only.
The lemonade is so awesome. I think it's the best lemonade in the world.
Rafael says their clientele consists of a lot of visitors and predominantly white, middle-aged corporate executives who moved to Bentonville for work and are looking for something new and exciting to try. Meanwhile, almost all the staff at Yeyo's has a familial connection to Mexico or Central America. And Rafael encourages them to experiment with their own dishes and share it with their coworkers at family meals on a weekly basis.
If you're from Honduras, you can make Honduran food today and share with the group. Or if you're from Oaxaca, you can make something really good from Oaxaca.
Tonight's shift lead, Katie Roman, is from El Salvador and says she loves how different the family meal always is.
Chef Carlos made a mousse concoction for our dessert menu that was phenomenal, and we all kind of got to partake in that. So amazing. It's really cool to kind of get an insight of how their brain works. You know, sometimes at work you see your coworkers more than you see your family, and so when your coworkers suddenly become your family, it makes it a little bit more enjoyable, as cheesy as that sounds.
These days, 18 members of the Rios family are involved with the restaurant in some way, from management to farming to dishwashing. If you ask Rafael, though, working with family comes with its own unique set of challenges. The loving yet dysfunctional family running a restaurant in the FX show The Bear comes to mind for him.
There's a lot of truth to that, especially when it comes to the siblings and the brothers. I used to come home and watch the first season, and my kids were like, Dad, really? Like, do you don't have enough at work that you have to come here and torture us with this stuff as well? She's like, there's someone out there that understands everything.
As much as he jokes about getting into it with his siblings, though, he's really grateful he has them around, especially his sister, Rocio. She sort of keeps the rest of them in line.
So Rocio is the one that keeps me and Roman on a leash, you know? She's the one that has more common sense, if you will.
As I was wrapping up my interview with Rafael, I started thinking about how far he'd come geographically in his career. I mean, he grew up in Mexico, discovered he loved making Mexican food in the Army, moved to Arkansas for his dad's dream, and sort of wound up making his own dreams come true too. I wanted to know, did he feel successful? And also, what even success was for him?
Success to me is the recognition that we have gotten from at a national level. And it has to do with our ability to connect people with food. I think there's the educational part is where we have been successful. When you come to our restaurants, you will see the difference. You will taste the difference.
A frequent contributor to Gravy, Mackenzie Martin is podcast producer for KCUR Studios in Kansas City, Missouri, and host of the podcast, A People's History of Kansas City. There, she helps investigate questions and local curiosities in a way that brings listeners along for thought-provoking adventures with plot twists. She's also the senior producer for Up From Dust and the editor of Seeking a Scientist. We thank Wendell Patrick for Gravy's theme music. We also owe a huge thank you to Clay Jones and Broadcast Studios for recording and mixing Gravy. Managing editor for Gravy and all other SFA media is Sarah Camp-Milo. Olivia Terenzio is our podcast editor. Fact-checking comes courtesy of Heather Cole. Mary Beth Lassiter is our publisher. Visit us at southernfoodways.org to learn more about our work. While you're there, watch a film, listen to an oral history, read an article from Gravy Quarterly, or make a donation. Your dollars fund our work and help us make more Gravy. If you enjoyed this episode, leave us a rating or review and tell a friend. There is plenty of gravy to go around.